Well, hello again, Dave and Tiff back with you. And since the last time we had our podcast, my gosh, Tiff, a lot has happened because if you think about it, we took a little break last week. Since then, NBA, MLB has gotten underway. And, you know, we're going to talk a little bit about the bubble concept of the NBA and the MLB because now we've seen it in action. So there's been a little hurdles here and there, especially on the MLB side. So we'll get to that a little bit later. Our guest today, by the way, is going to be someone that we're going to have a lot to talk about. It's going to be the executive director of the Hawaii High School Athletic Association, and we'll just say HHSAA. Chun will be joining us because Tiff, you know, if you're following the news like I am, you hear that the public schools start date got pushed back to August 17th. So how does that affect the HHSAA sports and their scheduling? And I got to think, once Chris comes on, Tiff, you may be like, oh my God, another change in the plans.
Well, and this is just how the situation has been. You have something set in stone, and then things change by the week, by the day, sometimes by the hour. And it's been something that everyone in decision making has had to have the ability to make things as fluid as possible, because at a moment's notice, whatever you've worked so hard to establish has to be thrown out the window, because this whole coronavirus situation has forced your hand to be changed almost day to day, it seems.
Yeah, and I was talking to one athletic director, and he was saying that, you know, throughout all of this, you know, him and his other peers have been meeting and planning for scenario A, scenario B, scenario C, and then suddenly something changes, or there's another thing, something the mayor says we can't do this, or the governor says this date is pushed back. They scrap A, now it's B, C, D, and E. So I know they were saying it's like we're constantly preparing for all of this. His thing was, you know, let's just wait, because all of this might change and the dates will change, and it has been. So we'll talk to Chris Chun from the HHSAA about that. Another big thing that happened over the past couple of weeks, you know, Tiff, we're out of it just for 1 week, and things seem to just explode. Then the Pac-12 players, who call themselves #WeAreUnited, I believe, sends this letter to the Pac-12 conference, making not just a request, but it's demands that if these things aren't met, we're not going to play. I heard it's about 12 or so players from different schools in the Pac-12. I don't know if you heard if there's any more than that.
As far as I've heard, it's around that number, yes. And of course, it has the Hawaii tie because of what a former Hawaii football coach, now the leader at Washington State with Nick Rolovich, and his situation of talking to a player. That audio of a phone call has been since released to the public for everyone's listening. And just in this day and age, you just have to be as weary and as careful as possible, because anytime you say something in this day and age of social media, it's whether it's good or not so good, it's going to be put out there for the public. And with Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, you name it, this day and age, that's how a lot of people get their information, is through social media. And as quick as you say something, the quicker it is to be posted for everyone to see and hear.
Yeah, so a little bit of that backstory that just kind of popped up. So at Washington State, apparently one of the players on his team is a member of these 12 players called We Are United, who sent this letter to the Pac-12 commissioner making these demands. And these demands are, a lot of it has to do with obviously safety and health. Some of it has to deal with like social injustice, but there's other things in that letter. One of them I read was demanding that the commissioner's salary be reduced. Something he makes about $5 million a year, and they're demanding that be cut. So it also ties in with things about what you're hearing with the Pac-12 getting, you know, more compensation as a college athlete for playing athletics for the Pac-12. So there's a lot of that, all in this one letter that was sent to the commissioner. So apparently in this conversation, Coach Nick Rolovich is talking to his player and summarizing it, saying, you know, if you want to, and this player decided to opt out. right, decided to opt out of playing because of health concerns because he has sickle cell disease.
Mm-hmm.
So Coach Rolovich is saying, okay, if you're wanting to opt out because of that and the COVID-19, I understand. But if you're going to sit out because you're part of this group, then he's saying that now that's a different story. So he's kind of making it like, maybe you're not going to be part of this team if that's the reason why you stay out. And he said something about we're going to reallocate our resources to those who are playing. So there's some reading between the lines here that he could be off the team, although ESPN says no one has been off the team, but this player could be off the team if Coach Rolovich decides to say, look, if that's the reason, we're going to put our scholarship and stuff to someone who's going to be here.
Oh, and this is a situation where you've got a first-year head coach, and most of these players were not his recruits. So he's already walking, I won't say a fine line, but he's walking a line where he's having to get to know these players. Sure, he's been in Pullman since January when he left University of Hawaii to go to Washington State, and he's only been there for half a year. And so he's been having to make those necessary friendships and work relationships and to get to know these players on a one-on-one level. Something like this, the last thing you want as a first-year head coach is to have some sort of divide in your locker room. Now, it remains to be seen. The Pac-12 has come out with a conference-only schedule. It remains to be seen if we're even going to have college football in the fall, and we're 4 or 5 weeks away from the season opener. The last thing you want is to have this type of divide in your locker room, especially if you're a first-year head coach.
Yeah, so again, the backdrop of this as well, Mountain West Conference has not come out and said whether they're adjusting their schedules. All of the Power 5 have kind of said they're going to go conference, or some of them are going to go 9 conference games plus 1 non-conference, 10-game schedules. So everything is being modified here. College football is obviously the beast, and everyone wants it to be played. So these players, these Pac-12 players are saying, hey, look, you're using us for the money. The reason we want to play is for the money. Yet you keep saying the first and foremost thing is the safety and health of the student athlete. But yet the interpretation is money is what's driving us to play, and they have all these demands. So I haven't read it, but just reading about what is in there, I mean, some of it I can see where they can get some, conversation with the commissioner about things. But stuff like demanding that the commissioner's pay is cut, that's not gonna go over well. It just sounds like they're going for like the money grab, and whether some people might feel it justified or not, the optics just doesn't look good if you kind of throw those kind of things on the plate.
I don't know. I can't see a commissioner having the wherewithal to say that and to justify the fact that I can everything I do for the conference. My salary for the year will be $5 million. Come on, really?
Gee, I'm curious what the SEC commissioner gets paid.
Let's go ask my
all
wife.
Those guys are the big,
probably double or triple that.
Yeah, they're getting big banks, so that is hot. What do you think about this NBA bubble versus the MLB? I've watched a few games. I've watched some baseball games. I've watched some NBA games. But then on this point right here, you'd say, well, MLB is a little bit more of an issue here because there have been more players that have tested positive. There's a lot on one team. The Miami Marlins getting hit with 17 players, and I think some of them are coaches as well.
And then the Cardinals recently as well. And to answer your question, it's not even a comparison. What the MLB has lacked to do, and this is all on Rob Manfred, even though he came out a couple days ago and said if it's up to the teams and how they treat it. No, you had the opportunity to make it division by division and have 3 bubbles, if you will, East, Central, and West, and you failed to do so. You're having teams now required to have, in essence, hall monitors to be with these teams, especially when they're on the road, to make sure that they follow and heed all protocols. Bubble life has showed us, and this began with the NWSL, MLS, TBT, the basketball tournament. They show that if you can bubble, and you do bubble, they have shown that they can limit or have 0 cases for many days in a row. And it's great to have MLB. I'm a Padres fan. You're a Dodgers fan. Sorry
don't even bring it up yesterday.
You can hear me yell from Makiki how excited I was yesterday when the Padres beat the Dodgers. But I'm glad MLB is back. Seeing all the cases with the Marlins and the Cardinals, and you already saw where players were already opting out of the season before it even started. It's tough to say that the season will complete 60 games because obviously the Marlins won't play 60 games, the Cardinals won't play 60 games. As much as I want to say that a lot of these teams will be able to play the full 60-game season, you're going to run into situations where teams are going to be playing like 50, 55 games at the most. Some may get the full 60 depending on their schedule and who they play and whatnot. It's tough. I get that they wanted to be the first one to include travel for their season and try to keep it as normal as they could. It's just shown right now that that is not the situation that can be sustained to have a full season. The bubble life, as fun as it is, I'm not much of an NBA fan, but I've watched most of the games. They've been great. A lot of these playoff implications with teams that are trying to get into the top 8, top 9, it's been great for TV.
Yeah, and I guess only to counter that, I kind of lean with Derek Jeter, right, the president of the Marlins, and he kind of flat out said, you know what, the players let their guard down. They weren't following the protocols. So I guess the positive for MLB is that it's not like 2 players on so many different teams. It's kind of hit the Marlins to a big extent, and it's hit the Cardinals to a lesser extent, but you can kind of say those 2, or the other teams seem to be okay. So you can maybe, in the positive sense for MLB, hey, what Derek Jeter said, we got to follow protocols, and hopefully we'll be able to get out of this this little period here and get our season rolling. And before talking about getting rolling, we're going to enter in from our waiting room here, our guest today on the Dave and Tiff podcast, the executive director of the Hawaii High School Athletic Association, and a person who's had, I don't know, maybe about 4 meetings a day, or at least so many a week related to the pandemic. Chun joining us. Chris, can you hear us?
Yeah. Hi, guys.
Hey, Chris. Thanks for joining us. First off, let's start with this. Hawaii High School Athletic Association. You guys just had a board meeting yesterday. What's kind of the latest news related to that?
So we just talked about like the recent events that have been transpiring in the community. They've been keeping up with our meetings with the Department of Health and the various leagues. I've been informing them of how our meetings have been going, and it's just I don't know what the situation is, how it's going in Oahu right now, that we're probably definitely going to have to do a delay of some sort with the fall sports.
Is the delay more connected with the fact that the public schools shifted their start date back to August 17th? Or is that the delay getting more connected to the fact that there's all these triple-digit number of cases? Or is it kind of a combination of both?
Yeah, I believe it's a combination of both. Mostly what we were focused on, I think last week, was the delay in the public schools. And we're trying to figure out how long they need. But obviously, within the last 4 or 5 days, things have shifted dramatically in our society. So we're going to have to take into account those things as well.
You know, who have you been, how should I say this? Since this pandemic started, who kind of has been in your think tank, or who you've been consulting with in terms of from the public health side? Or have you, like, you know, getting some guidance, getting information on latest protocols, or what I should recommend to the board, those kind of things? Is there anybody or any group of people you've been kind of consulting with on the public health side?
Yeah, so I've been reaching out to whoever I can. I've been trying to use my contacts. So we have Ross Oshiro from Queens. He used to be in charge of all the athletic trainers in the state of Hawaii. So now he's connected at Queens. He put us in touch with the Department of Health. So we've been meeting every about 2 weeks with Dr. Sarah Park and 2 other doctors from the Department of Health. We've been in meetings with our sports medicine committee, which is involved with a lot of the athletic trainers in the state, and there's several physicians on that committee, and we've also met with the various leagues. I've met with every executive director and at least 2 athletic directors in each league weekly since probably whole thing started back in March.
Go ahead, Tiff got a question for you.
Chris, you mentioned you've been talking with the ADs and sort of the league commissioners, if you will. What has been some of the biggest issues that you folks have come across?
I guess it's how do you play sports in a pandemic? Obviously, how can you do stuff with having social distancing and certain requirements, and it's what we've tried to do, and I've stressed this with the leagues, is that we're trying to stick together and maintain on the same path. We obviously want the best for our student athletes, whether they're private school students, public school students, and we want to work together. We've seen a lot, I guess, nationally, even to some extent on the state level, that people aren't on the same page. So trying to keep everyone on the same page and keep everyone on the same schedule and make sure that we're all still working together and we all have our student athletes' interests in heart. And I think we've put that message out for the most part since this whole thing began.
You know, tagging on to that, and by the way, we're talking with Chris Chun, Executive Director of the Hawaii High School Athletic Association. You know, I look at the private schools, the ILH mainly. You know, they probably have a little bit more control, right, over their student body, their student athletes, in terms of the protocols that they can enforce to ensure, you know, that things are being done the way it should be to maximize safety for the students. The public schools, you know, less resources, more difficult to try and, you know, enforce protocols with them. Has there been, I guess you could say, a little bit of tug of war in terms of moving forward? Maybe the ILH ADs and coaches are saying, hey, we can do this, so we could move forward this way. But the public schools, the KIF, BIF, OIA saying, we can't really do that. Has there been a little bit of that?
In regards to moving seasons around or exploring the option of moving seasons and talking about stuff, I think everyone's been on the same page. Like, they all want to play the sports season at the same time. We're trying to figure out that if we do have any moves or we do move them, where do we move to? And I think every league has their own opinion about that, about what suits best for them. And it's been more of a kind of a neighbor island contrast to Oahu thing, and especially recently, because as you know, the neighbor islands are doing quite well on their virus level, and Oahu schools, which is half the public schools and the largest private school league, we've been struggling here on Oahu trying to contain and curb this thing.
Chris, do you think sports can operate to an extent if, say, the public schools went to an all online instructional status, or does that change a little bit if they do a hybrid of in-person class as well as going online?
I think as long as there's they believe it's safe to do some kind of in-person learning, that there can be a form of athletics. If they shift to an entirely online learning system, then obviously there's something going on in the schools and they don't feel it's a safe learning environment in person. So then it would likewise probably be not a good idea to play high school sports at that point.
Hey, Chris, I know that a lot of the, if not all the sports schedules kind of works backwards, right? You guys at the HHSAA will set the tournament championship dates and everybody kind of moves backwards toward filling out their schedules when they start, when they condition and all that kind of stuff. Do you have any, like, I guess you could call them drop dead dates where, you know what, if we pass this date, we will not be able to operate this state tournament? Is there anything like that?
We initially had drop dates for 3 distinct seasons. Like, if we can't start by this time, we can't run a traditional fall, winter, spring. So we had a drop dead date for that. And that was sometime in October. But the way we're trying to plan stuff now is we're learning, and every day something's different, that we have to be fluid in this kind of situation. So even if we have some kind of drop dead date, we're trying to be fluid to see like what can be done, and how can we explore doing different kinds of seasons. And there's every league still has different ideas on what that might look like if we have to postpone sports.
I know one of the biggest ideas that have been bantering around, and you kind of touched on this earlier, is moving sports to different seasons. What was traditionally fall, you move it to spring, and maybe some spring you move it to fall, and those kind of things. Is that, I know it's one of the options, but is that kind of a leading candidate in terms of moving sports around, or are the obstacles to do that more challenging in and of itself?
So I wish I had an easy answer for you guys, but I've been looking at different states and how they do stuff, and like Washington recently moved their low risk sports earlier, which is mostly the spring sports. They moved them into the fall, and they moved their moderate risk back and the high risk even farther back. The problem that we have here in Hawaii with moving sports into the fall that might be low risk, like tennis, golf, baseball, softball, those are the sports where the kids miss the most amount of class time. So it doesn't make sense moving sports into the fall at this time when we're at our highest viral load we've ever been as a state, and when kids might only have one or two dates in class at a time per week. And if they have to get out of school early to play sports, they might only have one day of in-class learning a week. And I don't think that would best fulfill the needs of our students at this time. In regards to pushing stuff back, we're exploring it, and we understand the challenges that if we do, we're going to run into. If we're fortunate enough to play, we're going to run into venue conflicts. Multi-sport athletes are going to have to make a choice. It's just everyone's going to have to be willing to make sacrifices and do what it takes if we want some kind of resemblance of what we had in years past.
Go ahead, Tiff.
Chris, how has it been for you? I mean, we talked about this situation with you in your position with the HHSAA, but you're also a father. How has it been for you with your little ones being at home for the last few months?
Yeah, so it's been good and bad. So in my role in this, I'm a father. My son is entering his senior year in high school. He's played baseball all 3 years up to this point. He lost out on his spring last year already. My daughter's 6th grade. She plays softball and stuff, and I also coach intermediate baseball, so I'm a coach. So I've experienced this from a parent, coach, and administrator level. So I know what everyone's going through, and I just want it to be back to normal. And I go through highs and lows like everyone else. Sometimes I believe we can do this. Other times I'm like, oh my God, this is too crazy. What's going to happen? And I just try to think of it as a parent, would I feel safe for my kid to play? As a coach, would I feel safe to have my players play? And as an administrator, I know how important high school sports is, but I just want to make sure that if we do this, it's in a safe environment. And I think just like other people, I have as much to lose as anyone else, because my son's junior year was lost already, and up comes his senior year. So I know how important it is for people.
Is your son looking at you when you come home and say, okay, Dad, what's the story? Am I playing? Did you get a little bit of that?
Yeah, I think in the beginning he was like, why can't we play? Especially when the viral counts were low, and now he's kind of understanding, and he just got a job. So it's good. But yeah, he's even gonna be at school only a day and a half a week. And hopefully that lasts, and the DOE can figure stuff out and get everything going after the first quarter, and then we can figure out how to implement other stuff as well.
So Chris, what's been tougher, trying to advocate for a Division III or getting through this pandemic?
Yeah, I think both are equally tough stuff.
What's been the conversations like with you're talking with you're talking with league directors. You've said you're talking with athletic directors. I personally am starting to get a little bit exasperated every time I hear the latest news of the coronavirus count, because yes, I understand the ramifications, but it gets frustrating because you know that the higher the numbers get, the more you're anticipating possibly school's going to be doing this or that as a parent. I can imagine as an administrator of sports, you're waiting on these dates to be set so you can move forward. What kind of emotions are you kind of getting from these other folks, the athletic directors, the league administrators? Are they exasperated? Are they high and low like you? Are they still optimistic? What's kind of the tenor there?
I think it's all of the above. We understand the need that, I mean, as humans, we kind of want finality or some kind of definite date or something so we can work off of. So we're getting pressure to do that, and we just want to make sure that whatever decision that we make or come to is the right one and the safe one and the best for all our student athletes. So that's why we're taking our time. There's a drop dead date until August 19th. So, I mean, we have a couple weeks, and I know that we can't make any decision on August 19th. People have to plan for it. So yeah, we're trying to as best we can, but at the same time, I don't want to come out, make a rash decision today and announce it, and then we have to change it the next day, because I see that happening over and over again. And to me, that's been really, really frustrating just as a citizen having to go through that.
So just to clarify, as of today, even though public schools are starting August 17th, sports could start August 19th, that's still okay?
No, we're probably going to have to push that back, because I don't think the DOE will have any extracurricular activities starting on the 18th, but I don't think they've announced a date on when extracurricular activities can go yet. So we kind of wanted to coordinate with them first.
Gotcha. Well, hey, Chris, I know it's been a very stressful few months, and we thank you so much for all you're doing for high school sports, for all our young boys and girls in the prep ranks. But good luck to you, and continue, and hang in there.
Thanks, guys. It was good seeing you guys.
All right.
Thanks, Chris.
Take care. That's Chris Chun, Executive Director of the HHSAA, the Hawaii High School Athletic Association. And
Great first name.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, hey, some people don't know that.
Nope.
If your first name is actually Christopher, so.
Christopher, yes.
Do you go by Chris? Does anybody call you Chris?
Only when I'm in trouble, which is for a whole other situation to discuss.
So if your mom is upset with you, it was Christopher or Chris?
If I was in trouble and my parents were upset with me, it would be Christopher Joseph. Then I knew I was really in trouble. You get that middle name associated when you get scoldings from your parents. You know you've done something quite bad.
You never got in trouble. The way your mom talks about you, you were like the perfect kid. Even at 8 months on a plane, you're just sweet. By the way, some other news just found out. With the pandemic, players opting out. We've heard of some, MLB, NBA players. Well, in tennis, Rafael Nadal has said he will not play in the U.S. Open. So he's the top draw. So that kind of hurts there. And you heard from Chris Chun, although public schools have moved their date back to August 17th as a start date, the start of extracurricular activities is still to be announced. So that's going to be another date.
Well, and to go a little bit further on that point, these professional athletes that have the money, they're making a business decision, and so whether or not they have an opt-out clause, or the fact that their contract is guaranteed, or they have been smart with their money, they can afford to do so, and they can come back the following year or the year after, what have you. Like Chris said, it's been a tough situation for these high school kids, especially the spring sport athletes, and to even go a little bit further, those senior athletes, they didn't get a chance to play for a trophy that's right here. A lot of these kids, that's what they play for in this state, is to win one of these COA trophies. Yep. So you just hope that sports can be played at some point in this 2020-2021 sports year, whenever that begins to happen.
Indeed it is. And that's before you almost picked the nose of the trophy, by the way.
Yes, I did.
Let's go to Tiff's Corner, because we've had a lot of stuff going on as we kind of just ran through that. So what's in the corner that has accumulated over the past couple of weeks?
All right, Dave. So you talked about the NBA and the fact that it went on hiatus in March after Rudy Gobert was the first person to test positive for the virus. How about the first game of the NBA restart? Coincidentally, ironically, the Jazz were part of that game. Guess who scored the opening points as well as the winning points in the Orlando bubble in that opening game? Rudy Gobert. Go figure.
He was the start of everything. How do you believe that, huh?
Touching microphones sold separately, right?
Yep.
Keep it in basketball. We'll go to the WNBA. How about Sabrina Ionescu? Her second game of the season, 33 points, 7 boards, 7 assists. The number 1 draft pick of the New York Liberty unfortunately rolls her ankle this past Friday in her third professional game. They've said it's a grade 3 sprain. And with this shortened season for the WNBA, you're looking at a season in jeopardy for the electrifying Sabrina Ionescu.
Now, they're in a bubble as well, aren't they?
They are in Florida as well, and they've dubbed it the Wubble because it's the WNBA. So it's a lot of the games are on TV, and ESPN has just announced that they are going to be showing even more games from within the Wubble in Florida. So a good chance to watch some very, very good WNBA basketball. And of course, Megan Huff, former Rainbow Wahine, and transferred over to Utah. She's part of it as well. And a lot of players we've seen in our 10 years of broadcasting Hawaii basketball on the women's side, a lot of those players we've seen are now in that WNBA.
Indeed. Florida is the place to be, although you can't see any games, but it's good to know it's in that state.
It really is. How far would you drive to help somebody?
Since I live on an island, I go at least 30 miles.
At least 25, 30 miles before you hit water, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this happened last week. Sean Riley, who is a staff lighting director for NBC Sports, he drove over 600 miles to create a home studio in the house of Mike Emmerich. You hear him on NBC for the NHL, so that he could call the games from Toronto and Edmonton, the 2 bubble cities for the NHL, so he could call those games from his house in Michigan.
Oh, how many miles again?
600.
I hope Doc Emmerich had at least fed him a meal or something.
Or something, right? I mean, it's a situation where you have some outside help, gets to come over and set up a whole studio. You've seen some of these broadcasters who aren't in their respective bubble for whatever sport they cover. Adam Amin, who is with MLB, with Fox, he's also the voice of the Bulls on TV. He's shown some things on Twitter where he's created a home studio in one of his separate bedrooms, and he's been able to call the games off satellite.
You and I could do that. We're doing it right now. We can create our own studio and background, and it's amazing what you learn when you're forced to, you know?
Right. And this to wrap up the corner, this past Sunday, I don't know if you got to watch on any AVP professional beach volleyball on Prime Video. Pair of Hawaii boys, Trevor Crabb out of Punahou, Tri Bourne out of now non-existent Academy of the Pacific, won the Porsche Cup in Long Beach over the weekend. It was the third part of the 3-part AVP Champions Series, their first team win, and individually for Tri Bourne, who has battled some medical issues, it was his 4th tour win, and for Trevor Crabb, it was his 2nd win.
We can also mention that Tri Bourne is also out of USC.
Yes, you can.
Well, it's good to see. That's another sport that's professional sport that's going on, is the AVP. Did they have fans?
They did not have fans. They had the last 3 weekends, they've had tournaments in Long Beach, and we're actually trying to get in touch with one of the commentators, Kevin Wong, who works for NBC. He's been there all 3 weekends to get his thoughts. So we're just trying to get in touch with him.
Hopefully, maybe he's seeing this. Kevin, we want to get you on our podcast, Kevin, just to let you know. Kevin Wong. Awesome.
What about you? Anything that you want to throw into the corner?
Well, leading up to the NBA, before they started playing games. You know how there's always these criticisms like, oh, it's not going to look the same. Oh, it's going to look like it's just summer league, or it's going to look like it's a scrimmage. Yeah, but they have the audio. It sounds like there's crowd. I love the big LCD board on the backside that looks like there's crowd. But watching them play, I mean, it's still the Lakers versus the Jazz, or it's the Trailblazers versus the Nuggets. It's still those teams, and you're still seeing the athletes that would have been performing if it was regular. So to me, I'm enjoying watching it, and I don't see the only difference is that the coaches aren't wearing suits, which I agree they shouldn't anyway. I never knew why basketball coaches wear suits to a game, but
I still think that basketball coaches should wear the uniform of what the players do, because in Major League Baseball, the coaches do it. Why not?
A lot of it goes back to the beginning days of the sport. So back in the beginning Ty Cobb days of baseball, managers were players. So they were playing while they also were managing. That was the common thing. So they wore the uniform, and even though it's metamorphosized into what it is now, the tradition stays. Similarly, the suit, even in football of old, men wore suits because that was the appropriate attire that men wore outdoors. A hat and a suit. And those things are just carried on. Football has changed. Now they wear more like the polo shirt or their team gear. And I think basketball should. I think coaches would be able to argue and jump around more if they had polo shirts.
They'd look more comfortable. Just ask Bill Belichick.
Yeah, Bill. And I'm drawing a blank here. San Antonio Spurs coach?
Greg Popovich.
You'd think he's the senior member of coaching staffs. He would be the one to say, keep the suit. He's like, I'm all for the polo. He hates the tie.
And this bubble, to go on to your point, the bubble for the NBA has almost made the game a lot better. You're seeing a lot more want to, as one of our good friends, Artie Wilson, likes to say on his broadcast. With the season being 8 to 10 games left before they start playoffs, you're seeing a lot more competition. You're seeing teams that are trying to justify for playoff position, teams that are trying to get 1 through 4 seeding to get home court advantage, if you will. And then I don't know if you saw earlier today, but Devin Booker just had a game-winning buzzer beater. So you're seeing teams that are towards the bottom of the standings that still qualified for the bubble still out there to compete because they have the sport that has driven them for their entire lives taken away from them for 3.5-4 months, and for them to now have the ability to go out there and play the game they love. You're seeing a lot more guys showing why they're playing the sport.
And they're playing. Like, there's not as much of the, after a slam dunk, the showmanship, holding up the jersey, that kind of thing, because a lot of that is for the fans, right? To see them, do this, all that kind of stuff. You're just playing against each other. These are your peers. So we're just playing. Never mind all that other stuff and, things that would angle toward the fans watching them. It's simply playing. So, I mean, I kind of like it. I think baseball with the shorter 60-game season too, you'll see more of that want to. They can't be messing around. They can't be taking games off. And maybe with the fact that it is a shorter schedule, when the postseason hits, pitchers' arms won't be as weary. They'll be more energized and more active playing. That the playoffs, I think, in Major League Baseball may be more intense because of the fact that these players are not as physically run down as they would be after 162 games. Who knows?
Definitely. And I've liked some of the changes for Major League Baseball with, like we talked about, the shorter season, no designated hit, or the DH universal. So that's also in the NL. I'm still getting used to the fact if a game goes extra innings, they start with the runner on second base. That one, I'm a little bit more of a purist mindset where I would not like to see a runner start in scoring position to begin a game in extra innings, if it goes that far.
I kind of like it only because I like baseball that has movement. And I know a lot of times when they go to extra innings, each team is trying to hit that home run and end it. And therefore you go into the 10th and then the 11th and then the 12th. Here you have a runner in scoring position, so it promotes the base hit. the base hit will hopefully end the game. So it's new, but I'm going to give it its shot. I kind of like the concept to kind of not only shorten the game, hopefully it won't go into 16 innings, but you'll be done in the 10th, maybe, so if there's a positive to that, maybe that'll be one of them.
I'm just going to miss seeing position players pitching.
That's right. In the 18th inning, now coming to the mound, left fielder, and so forth and so on. And they're throwing these lollipops, right? Because they haven't pitched since they were in high school, and they're like 28 years old now. So they're trying to just get it over the plate. That's going to be fun. Well, a good Tiff's Corner for you. A great show we had. And I want to thank Chris Chun from the HHSAA, Hawaii High School Athletic Association, joining us today. He's going to have to, like all of us, wait until the next proclamation of dates and things come from the DOE particularly, so that they can again reset their schedule. Hopefully we'll get some fall sports. But you're off to cover some radio and let us. Is it a Giants baseball game you're going to be operating?
Yeah, I'll be moving my way to the ESPN studios in downtown to go run the Giants Rockies broadcast over on CBS 1500.
So tune in for that. And until next week, we'll be back. Thanks, Tiff. And for me, Dave Kawada, thanks for tuning in. We will talk to you all later.
Bye.